Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Baltimore County Delegation meeting. Today is Friday, January 26th. And today we're going to be having a briefing from our esteemed county executive, followed by a bill hearing, and that will be followed by discussion and possible voting on two bills in front of delegation. So with that, I would like to introduce someone who, I hate to say it's cliche, needs no introduction at this point. He has been with us in various ways for many years as both a student member of the board, a member of the legislature, and even now our county executive. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. County Executive Johnny Olszewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the Baltimore County House delegation and maybe a few guests from the Senate. It is my pleasure to be with you today on this Purple Friday, Purple Fever taking over all of Baltimore County and Baltimore City and beyond. I want to thank my government affairs team and other members of the administration for being here as well. Chairman Ebersol, Vice Chair Jackson, Secretary Pasteur, new Speaker Pro Tem Delegate Stein, and our own speaker, Adrian Jones. We know we have a rock star set of leadership both here in the delegation and in the chamber. So thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to start by saying how much we appreciate your support and partnership. We have been able, I could spend all day just talking about the great things that we've done together, but you have done everything and standing with us to establish the Regional Water Governance Task Force, which is due with recommendations at the end of this month. You've helped us invest millions of dollars everywhere from Security Square to the Pikesville Armory to rack centers. I know in District 8, we have one opening soon, to skate parks, to investments at Trade Point. I mean, you name it, we've made investments in parks and people and schools and libraries everywhere. And we've done that in partnership with you, and our shared constituents are better for it. Especially proud of the work that we've done on school funding.
I think you could just open it. It's not locked.
We are finally, I think, digging out of the hole, and we're really sort of following the robust 15-year plan that we identify with the school system, the My iPass recommendations to invest everywhere to address condition, capacity, and equity. Together, we've established the Baltimore Regional Transit Committee. We are creating the state fund through DHCD for sustainable communities to apply for facade grants. And Madam Speaker, thank you again for your leadership on that. But really just proud of what we've been able to do together. We're proud to be your partners, to stand hand in hand to make Baltimore County a better place to live, work, and raise a family. So I just wanted to start with a note of thanks. That said, I think what I wanted to do today is sort of level set about some of the challenges ahead. This probably will be no surprise to members of this delegation because you're grappling with some of these challenges within the state budget. And so we know that in Baltimore County, continuing to support our capital budget will require sustained investment and sustained support. We know these are projects that are vital for our residents who depend on them, who want those better schools, parks, senior centers, bridges, and roads. As Governor Moore's budget was recently released, we are still in the process of pouring through all of the specific numbers. But I will say, I think relative to other budgets, it is certainly considerably austere. It is consistent with what the governor has said in the past about a season of discipline. But we also know that many times that these budget challenges at the state, if they're taken and tackled that way, ultimately mean that there can be challenges at the local level. So in addition to whatever you all have to grapple with at the state or decide to do, we have our own set of challenges locally. The governor may have said it best at Summer Mako when he opined that when the state catches a cold, local governments catch the flu. And that's certainly something that we're tracking. We want to work closely with all of you on. Like our peers across the state, inflation is real. It has affected all of our capital projects. Rising material and construction costs are making it more and more challenging to complete projects within budget. In addition to that, we are seeing the expiration of those federal ARPA dollars that are going to sunset at the end of this year. that further limits our ability to stretch. And while we have been very, I think, smart and strategic, making historic pay-as-you-go investments and maintaining probably also one of the largest rainy day funds we've had in the county's history, we also need to be prepared for both a potential economic slowing, as well as factoring in the increased costs of things like our employee health insurance, retirement contributions, employee raises, and again, any requirements and or cuts that were to come from the state would further pinch our ability to do more locally. But we know that we can work together. It will require commitment, ingenuity, and partnership. That's what this has been about with all of us since I've been county executive. So I think, we would just continue to invite the conversation about working together, being honest with each other, with our residents, so that we can make those critical investments and keep moving key projects forward. One area I wanted to call attention to where we hope to work with you all is the medical assisted treatment program for our correctional facilities. I know I appreciate Senator Hedelman, you mentioning something to MDH and sort of helping to work with us on that. We would invite the rest of the delegations in and members in to work with us. Baltimore County, we believe, has the largest jail population, or one of the largest local jail populations, where we are honoring the law for medical assisted treatments in our jails. Unfortunately, when the legislature passed the law, there wasn't also local funding associated with it. Because Baltimore City's jail is state-run, the state does cover the cost at that correctional facility. However, we are second behind Baltimore in the number of overdoses, so also have a very high population of our jail pretrial and post-conviction folks who are at our correctional facility who we are now treating. But unfortunately, without a funding source, we're currently drawing on our opioid restitution funding to do so. Both not a long-term sustainable solution, and also really is diverting from other community-based interventions that we want to focus on with that funding. We did recently testify before MDH to expand their 1115 waiver to help ensure that our county can access at least Medicaid funds to better serve incarcerated individuals and provide that care. But we really would welcome the chance to work with the state to better address that in our correctional facility. I know we've spoken at our briefing with many of you, and we've had individual conversations around transportation. Transportation is certainly an area that is a key priority for us. Just wanted to mention that we were concerned that the CTP proposed cuts that were now restored one time really threatened to exacerbate some of the longstanding cuts that our county had seen, and really are worried about making sure that we can provide residents to have safe and accessible transportation options. Even with Governor Moore's $150 million restoration, even before that, we're talking about some of the disparities that Baltimore County received relative to both the highway user revenue, as well as the locally operated transit system formulas. And so as we work with all of you to grapple for longer term solutions, I wanted to just put in the plug that we really need to look at things like lots that is more population based and more equitable. Our allocation is about $400,000, whereas places like Montgomery receives 100 times that at $40 million annually. When it comes to highway user revenue, with the restoration, we are at about $13 million a year. For context, Baltimore County used to receive $45 million. Back in 2009, when I was actually down there under Governor O'Malley during the Great Recession, we made the decision to ask local governments to step up and help be part of the solution. I think the plan, at least then, where there were conversations about restoring that funding, longer term, we have restored funding for our municipalities back to those pre-2009 levels or more like it. But the disparity between the pre-2009 and 2009 cents has been about a $450 million difference for Baltimore County alone. These are dollars that go to our roads, our bridges, our sidewalks, many of the requests that we get from council members and delegates and senators alike about doing more. But 13 million doesn't go very far, especially in this economy. And so a lot of the work has had to be borne by the local government. And so to the extent as we're talking about long-term fixes, we just want to make sure that we're front and center on both the lots conversation to help do things like replicate our circulator, but to also be at the conversation table about highway user. And with having no municipalities, none of that money is going to folks who are also maintaining roads here in Baltimore County. So we in Howard County are very unique in that regard. I also just want to mention that the cuts, even with the additional funding from the Moore administration, do not return the construction dollars that were originally programmed for the Dolefield Exchange. That has been a top county priority for about 15 years. And so we also, in addition to many other projects, we want to make sure that we continue to work with you on all of that. Want to talk a bit about housing. Really proud of the ways in which that with Director Hickey and many of you, we are leaning into our partnerships there. Attainable housing remains a top priority for me and for the county. We appreciate the governor and many of your commitment to making housing a top priority this legislative session. I don't talk about affordable housing. I talk about attainable housing because I think that housing should be both high quality and affordable for our residents, but also connected to open space and good schools and transportation options and employment options. So we support efforts to expand tenants' rights, to secure financial assistance for development in low-income communities. Very consistent with the work that we're doing in Baltimore County with $16 million from our new Housing Opportunity Fund through ARPA, as well as our annual $3 million commitment to build more capacity. We really are excited about some of the progress that we're about to make on that front, partnering with the private sector to find solutions to create more attainable housing throughout the county. I want to sort of jump in front of one, I think, local issue that's been a lot of attention, and that is mixed use legislation that we recently put forward. We did introduce mixed use legislation that is consistent with the state recognized and award-winning county master plan. It's a plan that engaged over 1,000 residents through 50 different meetings. That really is, as we are built out and we no longer have a lot of green space within our URDL, our urban-rural demarcation line, we're honoring the rural legacy beyond that, but we have to be thinking about how can we be intentional about redeveloping within our URDL and within those more urban jurisdictions. It's legislation that really focuses on those shopping centers, those aging shopping centers and infrastructure that are not keeping up with the change in the economy. We are very rare among local jurisdictions to not have any mixed use zoning designations. So this is a very small particular place where we're asking the council members, we are affirmatively asking them to approve these zones that are aligned with the nodes in the master plan to allow for the conversation around mixed use development. It doesn't guarantee that a project will be what a prospective developer might want. So there's still a very elaborate development review process. You still have to honor things like the APFOs. So there has to be sufficient school capacity. We look at things like water and sewer. We look at road conditions before we make any decisions. And we have to make sure that that infrastructure is taken care of. So we think this is an important step forward. It's supported by good government and the business community alike. We usually don't see those groups come together. And so I think that that says something about this. In terms of our asks for the legislature this year, we're really focusing on a few major capital requests. We've asked for funding to help with finishing the construction of a new Wilkins Police Precinct. There's actually a community meeting on the design so that we can hopefully break ground soon on that. We're seeking to replace the outdated Essex Police Precinct as well. We're also trying to move forward to the completion of a new North County Senior Center up in the Hereford area. We have land acquired. We're planning and designing, but looking to move forward there. We're also advocating for trail improvements in Oregon Ridge, and also the two places that were funded in the budget, the governor's budget submission. We're looking forward to a reimagined Randallstown Library and multi-use site that enables us to connect neighbors to grow stronger as a community, have multiple opportunities between the library and recreation to really make it a holistic site. We also want to thank the governor for his support of the Pikesville Armory. Again, one of those places we have partnered with federal, state, and local partners. And again, thanks to all of you. Looking forward to continuing to use the support of the state to make sure that we can continue to implement the long-term plan of My iPass. Built to Learn, the pass-through grants, the school capital construction dollars are all huge. They're incredibly helpful. I do want to flag that while not a concern for this fiscal year, potentially not for next year, but I think certainly in the future, with the county's contributions, both through our referendum and also pay-as-you-go dollars towards school construction, it's hard to believe, but we actually are going to go beyond, we likely will be beyond again, the state's contributions and match, the 50-50 match on construction between Built to Learn, the pass-through grants, and the state dollars. That we're going to have to at least have that on the horizon as one other thing that, if we want to keep up with this incredible pace that we've been able to do together, that will be out there in a conversation. Again, these are all priorities that we think will strengthen our county. We're continued to work with you, be available. I know Jenna Osen and Amanda are on here. I hope they are a great day-to-day resource for anything legislative or back in the district. Please, if you need me and can't get through to someone, call or text. I want to be available to all of you as well. I'll also just add, I'm very proud to represent Baltimore County as the Maryland Association of Counties president this year. Excited in the ways that we've already been able to work with my peers across the state on issues that affect us all. Everything from budget constraints to transportation issues, implementing the blueprint. Really excited to continue to build connections that will help Baltimore County, but also local government. So grateful to have you all as partners. Looking forward to the discussion today so that we can continue delivering better and stronger Baltimore County for all of our residents. And with that, I will wrap and take any questions the delegation may have, Mr. Chairman.
Nice and succinct. Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I have, by the way, I have my sweater on. I have my number 75 Jonathan Ogden jersey with me today. I'm curious, who's number 8? I'm not positive which one that is. Good to see. Nice to see you this morning. I want to welcome 3 that I counted, and I'm looking around for more, but I see we have 3 senators who've come to listen to the presentation today. Senators Brooks, Hettleman, and Salling are all here, and welcome to our meeting today. With that, I see as many as 4 hands up already. I did really see Delegate Allen's hand first, and so Delegate Allen, if you'd like to talk to the county executive, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks again, Mr. County Executive, as always, for joining us. I just wanted to clarify something. I know you mentioned that the bill or the mixed use stuff, we're still going to adhere to the AFPO. Is that correct? I just want to make sure we.
That's right. The legislation does nothing except create an opportunity to basically go from just one very stringent development zoning to a more robust mixed use opportunity. So you'll still have businesses along with residential. And it's just in these nodes that were identified through the experts, economic development experts, planning experts, community input about where we need to really be focusing our energy. And really, we need to do more than just have the zoning in place to have the conversation. We also are going to have the right incentives and development processes. But
right.
Council members, and the underlying zones that actually allow it, council members still also retain the underlying zoning authority. So we're both asking them to approve this. They retain the underlying authority that the zones that inhibit the mixed use. So there are really a lot of opportunities. And then on top of that, the entire development review process is still very much in play, where you have to work through things like APFO. So all the water, sewer, roadway, school, overcrowding infrastructure all has to be in place in order for a development to go forward. So because it's there, it doesn't guarantee. It's not a free blank check to do whatever you want. It just allows a different kind of development.
Right. Great. Thank you. You read my mind about that. Was my next question about the county council retaining their zoning authority. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Delegate Allen. Delegate Szeliga, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome. Good to see you, County Exec. Go Ravens.
You as well. Go Ravens.
Just a question on your slide on attainable housing. Can you tell me what attainable housing means and what tenant rights are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, well, before I answer the question about that, I also want to just mention that I guess Bradley Croner is on our team. In addition to supporting the Annapolis OGA team, he does a lot of work back home locally. So if there are questions about the mixed use, Brad's a great sort of point of contact. I don't know if Kimmy Rouson's on here as well, our deputy, but so as I was saying, attainable housing for me is more than just affordability. It is ensuring that housing is both high quality, that there is housing that, our teachers, our firefighters, the people who serve us in restaurants can actually afford. But also it should be connected to high quality schools, open space and parkland, transportation options. And so really that's what I look at. I will tell you, Delegate, we actually are looking at market-based solutions for how we're approaching things in Baltimore County. We're really trying to bring apartment owners and developers in to say, what would it take to sort of help ensure that projects are penciling out in a way that we have a mix of income. We actually believe that like having options at all price points and all incomes actually is beneficial both to individual communities and the county as a whole. And so we're trying to work with them to find those solutions. I would say, we're going to take it a bill by bill. I don't want to prescribe what you all or the governor may put in. So we know there will be some tenant right protections that are being proposed by the governor. I think our team is reviewing those, but just making sure that there are fair processes for things like evictions, for filing fees, et cetera. But any sort of reasonable efforts to support those areas we'll be looking to support as well.
So you don't have any specific tenant rights bill that you're advocating for?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. County Executive, for joining us today. I had a more specific, so this might be for you, Mr. County Executive, could be for Brad as well. With respect to the mixed use nodes, I've had a chance to kind of look at it quickly, so not in depth, but one of those mixed use nodes in our area, District 7A, appears to be over top of kind of the Lockheed Martin area on Eastern Avenue there. I'm really concerned about that one. As you know, that area has a long and continuing history of environmental impact from the Lockheed facility there. We're still cleaning up quite a bit over there. I'm concerned about the idea of putting housing there because of that environmental history that still continues to go on there. It's also one of the few areas of our district that frankly is primed for industrial use. We're very excited to have Rocket Labs come there recently, and I would hate to detract from the ability to get more of those good paying sort of industrial jobs in that area. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about that one in particular.
Yeah, I mean, a thought, and then I'll turn it over to Brad, who is really sort of in the weeds about all the particular nodes. I don't have all of them memorized. I'll confess that I know a few of them. But what I will say is, in addition to APFOs and other conditions, like environmental reviews would also be one of the things that we're looking at. Brad, I'm not sure this one's actually included, but do you have a sense of, this might be one that's close, there might be something nearby, but not actually Lockheed, but do you want to chime in?
Not positive Brad's on this
Brad
call.
is not, he's watching via YouTube. I'll get him in.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to that question. I'm sure he heard it. Well, he'll hear it in about 30 seconds. That's how the public one runs.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, if Brad's not able to, we can always follow up offline.
That could be an offline question anyway.
Anything that we're not able to share immediately in real time, we absolutely will follow up with more information.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks,
Thank
Delegate.
Thank you for the question. Delegate Mangione. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I get my question. Can you, because I hear a lot about this and I do not know the answer, but it's a hot topic of discussion, obviously, when it comes to affordable housing and development. If there is a project like Lutherville Station, for example, is obviously getting a lot of attention in that particular area. Is it a federal requirement or is it something to do with the county in terms of, say, for easy math, there's, 500 units built. Does 20% of that have to be deemed affordable, or is that not a real, or how does that work with new development in the county?
Under the mixed use legislation, if it were to pass?
Yeah, that and what current and what would happen under the new legislation.
It's my understanding that there's not a requirement that
Okay.
mixed use include attainable housing, but we actually provide a density bonus for people who choose to do that. I believe that's where the percentage comes from. So if a developer chooses not to do it, we certainly are trying. Again, we're trying to incent it through market-based solutions and answers. And we're authentically coming to the table to tell folks that, like, we have an obligation. I think we definitely have a legal obligation. I also think we have a moral obligation to provide housing options.
What is that? I'm sorry to interrupt you. What is the legal?
Yeah, so we have a VCA consent agreement, a voluntary agreement with HUD that was signed prior to my tenure to construct at least 1,000 affordable, attainable units across Baltimore County in areas of opportunity. And so, I'm a big believer that actually should be our baseline. We're making progress towards that, but again, I'm trying to do it in a way. Other solutions are things like requiring developers to do it. And so, I think the message is, come to the table and work with us, because I think there are opportunities to do this in a way that's good for everybody, including the folks who will live there.
Where are they in that number out of the, thank you, Mr. Chair, for these questions, out of the 1,000? And under the new legislation, is there a requirement for new development, or that remains the same?
No, again, so there'll be no requirement in the legislation that developers do attainable housing. There is an incentive bonus to say, if you do it, we can give you additional density towards that. So incentivizing, but not requiring.
Well, thanks for explaining that.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to see you, Mr. County Executive. I have a question about the kind of nature of housing that would be along most of Essex. So when we got the sustainable designation and the University of Maryland did the PALS study, the Partnership for Action, Learning, and Sustainability, one of the things they actually advised us is, and they said this explicitly, is to have less rentals. And they iterated through this concept, and they essentially said that, one of the problems with Essex is that there's not a whole lot of people who have a lot of disposable income. And that's why you don't see a Starbucks on Eastern Avenues, because people don't have the money for $6 cup of coffee. So they advise kind of raising the quality of housing stock, because frankly, in Essex, all of our housing is affordable, but it's affordable so that you get a lot of property investors, you get a lot of rentals everywhere. So my question is, in planning for this, I think a lot of people would embrace the idea of kind of higher end housing that uplifted the quality of the area. But what I suspect is going to happen here is we're going to get a lot of like high density units, which from even what we're told from our economic development partners, it is not going to help us much. So what are we doing to plan for that here, and maybe drive up the quality of our housing stock in places like Essex, which are going to see a lot of this mixed use development if this passes?
Look, I'm a firm, and as you know, Delegate, thanks for the question. We've done a whole Essex initiative where we have gone in to reimagine Essex, and we're making investments in public safety and streetscaping and other improvements in recreation and parks. So we're really trying to be holistic in our approach here. What I would proffer on your question is that it goes back to the point about, like, the housing should be of quality. It's not just, I think part of what's happened in the past is that we've allowed just sort of the lowest common denominator of development happen well before our tenure. So we're asking to work with developers to say, how do we provide housing for our people who need it? We've got people who work on 911 center, people who are county employees who can't afford housing as it stands. And that to me is sort of the problem, right? But I think this goes back to also, we should concentrate poverty. So this is why we have to find developments and find ways to incent developments that have a full range, including affordability, all the way up to the market rate. And so I think what we've seen in the past is a lot of folks, this is just me, a lot of places have put all low income housing, all lower income housing in one place versus taking a more holistic approach to say we need, I think, a range of incomes in most of our housing opportunities. There are also places that are already, as you point out, naturally occurring, affordable, and they may not be the best condition. We are taking the position that we should go into those places and uplift those communities. And so sometimes that will require some investment to both keep the quality of that housing and improve that, but also keep the affordability. And so, you know, there's not a magic wand on all of the housing issues. I'm sure you guys are going to discuss this legislative session, but I think it really is becoming a pressing issue that we can't ignore anymore. So we're excited to be at the table. And to the extent the delegation is interested, there's a lot of questions around housing. I would actually offer up a really in-depth discussion with Director Terry Hickey, maybe at a future delegation hearing, to talk about all the work that we're doing and to really go deeper into these issues. I try to be smart about a whole lot of things, but I have nowhere near the depth of knowledge as Director Hickey on housing issues.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of that. The problem therein is that a majority of the affordable housing is concentrated in the southeast and the northwest of the county. You know, and it really drags on the southeast. Places like Essex and Dundalk, have a little bit of a pejorative on it. And, you know, you don't get a lot of people who think about the qualities of the southeast side, our proximity to the water, our waterfront areas, which are really stunning. And that's kind of the need. So I'm worried that it seems that what we're going to get is more high density housing in the most, you know, low income housing part of the county.
Well, I'll just note, Delegate, that you know, I think in mixed use, the majority are market rate, and there's also language about the quality of design. I would say, as it relates to our consent decree, actually the areas of opportunity do not include those places that already have a large concentration of attainable or affordable housing. So actually, we are being required to create the housing outside of the places you've identified. I would say also, as someone who's lived almost my entire life, or a good part of my life in Dundalk, I'm also committed there. In addition, we also just announced a reimagining Veterans Park in partnership with community members there. Part of it is actually having government be at the table and make the investments in our communities, which we are doing, in addition to trying to find solutions to the housing challenge. But appreciate your concern and comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Delegate. And I think we're just about at the end of a good time slot. So I see Delegate Ruth has her hand up for the last question or comment. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. County Executive, for this report and for all your work. I wanted to continue the conversation about attainable housing, and you know, I have a constituent I'm trying to help right now who is a teacher. She's actually a teacher in Prince George's County, but she lives in my district, and her house burned down last week, and so she's pretty much exhausted whatever resources there are to help her, which is pretty limited. And she's now looking for a place to live while the insurance company rebuilds her house. And she cannot find any place that she can even afford. So isn't it true that when we talk about attainable housing, we're not just talking about low income people, but working people who there's just not enough, you know, housing that they can afford?
It is. It is. Thank you, Delegate. And I appreciate your advocacy on some of these issues. And I think having Director Hickey, because I think he also has a slide about what does 60% or 80% of AMI mean. Like, we get lost in the numbers sometimes and we forget about the people who are behind those numbers. And so I think it's important to keep that perspective. I'm sorry for your constituents' situation. I'm also happy to have our housing team connect, if they haven't already, to see if we can be of assistance there.
I have been in contact with them. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you, Delegate Ruth. And Mr. County Executive, we thank you for being here today. I always have to chuckle a little as we invite you to come here and talk to us, as I find, and I think many of us do, that you're very, very accessible. And so you don't have to wait for one of these meetings to connect with you and talk with you about things that are of concern to us. And I appreciate your availability today, both today and ongoing. So I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to members of both delegations. Good luck the rest of the session. Please let us know how we can help, and go Ravens.
All right, off we go. Thank you all very much. All right, now we move to the business part of our meeting. We'll start with bill hearings. A bill that we didn't quite get to last week, but we can get to this week will be House Bill 417, which has been submitted by Delegate Grammer. Delegate Grammer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the delegation. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer to present House Bill 417. House Bill 417 alters the qualifications used to determine standing for community associations when seeking judicial relief for nuisance actions in Baltimore County. This was originally Senator Sidnor's bill, which I went on to sponsor in the House. This bill has passed both the House and the Senate, but not in the same year. The section of code was enacted in 1997 in response to growing problems of community blight in Baltimore County. Our county was one of several to put in place similar language to deal with community blight issues. However, the current language of this section is prohibitive to the functional use of the statute. Specifically, the household dues and bonding requirements under this code make the code impractical and out of step with how modern community associations work. Most communities have found it dysfunctional and have legitimate concerns to dismiss for lack of standing. The bill is almost identically mirrors changes adopted by Baltimore City, which has found these revisions to be appropriate. Baltimore County has growing problems with community blight. Most frequently, these deleterious issues are related to neglected properties, trash, and rats. One problematic actor can create a huge problem for a street or a community. This bill has passed the full House in 2018, full House in 2019, full Senate in 2020. It is in the same posture. I'd like to thank the Speaker who helped us get a vote on this bill last year. And I've talked with the new leadership of Environment and Transportation, and I believe they're willing to help us with this bill this year. Thanks for the opportunity to present House Bill 417. Be happy to take questions and ask for a favorable.
Thank you, Delegate. I understand you have no witnesses. You're the testimony. We certainly do appreciate that.
Anything for you.
I'm taking questions from delegation for you, and I see Delegate Ruth. I see Delegate Ruth's hand up.
Thank you so much. Delegate, I just wanted to confirm this is in the same form as what you introduced last session.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
And this delegation passed this bill in this form last year. Are there any other questions on House Bill 417? Okay, seeing none, that ends the hearing on House Bill 417. We'll take that bill up. Delegate Carter, is that a question on 417?
Yeah.
I wasn't quite finished my sentence.
Just real quick. Delegate Grammer, is there any written testimony from anybody? If there is, if you can get it to us, because we look forward to hopefully supporting this again and getting this out.
If there is written testimony that has been submitted, it would be on the Google Drive. Just would have put it there, but maybe Delegate Grammer has access to something else. You can answer the question.
No, there's no written testimony.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's try one more time. I think this ends the hearing on House Bill 417. Delegate Grammer, thank you for bringing it to us. We're now going to move to voting. We have two bills to consider for voting today. The first bill we will consider is House Bill 108, Baltimore County Board of Education non-student member and student member, compensation for non-student members and scholarships for members. This bill is ready. I turn to the Education Subcommittee Chair for a report on this bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Education Subcommittee met this week to consider this bill and voted unanimously to move it forward.
Okay, so I take that as a favorable motion from the subcommittee. And so we'll take this, we'll allow for discussion. And then if we finish discussion, perhaps we'll take a vote. Delegate Szeliga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just because we have, pardon me, people watching this that may not have access to this bill, can you please give us an explanation of the details
Yeah,
It's a
that
base
bill,
for
yeah,
those.
the bill was explained last week, but but I'll allow the sponsor a moment to elaborate.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Shaleka, Delegate Shaleka for asking for the recap. And Senator Brooks is still on, and he was the cross-filer in the Senate. But just as succinctly as possible, we were at a point where we were actually more than half of less than 50% of what the two systems above us were making for the work that they do on the board. And there are actually 7 systems, only one of them being the same as ours, but 7 systems that are smaller than ours that were getting compensation more than ours. So we were truly out of step, and been out of step even with the increase that we got a few years ago. We were still out of step. And as the 2 people who came on last week to testify, we know that what our board members do now is far greater than what they have done in the past. And many of them, as one of the witnesses said last week, are working, and they take time off from their positions to do the work of the board. So they spend an inordinate amount of time, and the amount of money that we are requesting puts them still not up to the 2 above them, but absolutely closer to that and commensurate with the amount of work that they do. The county executive has approved it, and we're hopeful that they will get this because they certainly deserve it. Does that help, Delegate?
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Pastor.
Okay.
Doug, I'm going to go real quickly to the subcommittee chair and let her add anything she thinks is significant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill would increase the compensation of our school board members. The student member currently gets a scholarship of $7,500. It would increase the scholarship to $10,000 for the school year they serve. The chair of the board is currently compensated at $7,500 a year. This bill would increase their compensation to $17,500 a year, and a general member of the board is currently receiving $7,500 a year, and this would increase their compensation to $16,500. As Delegate Pastor shared, we are woefully, our $7,500 payment was much less than Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And the current members of the board are doing yeoman's work and really showing up in the community and partners to us in the work that we do. So, as I said, the committee voted unanimously to move this bill forward.
Thank you both. I hope that takes care of that. Are there any other comments before we take up the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to, without objection, and that should happen now, I'm going to just take this as a hand raised vote in this case to see if we have, I got to enlarge my screen so I can see you all. There we go. All those in favor of the favorable motion on this bill, just put your hand in the air so I can see it. Okay, I'm seeing mostly all hands. Are there any opposed to this bill? Lower your hands, those of you who have them up already. I don't know how mine got up. Okay, we have one. I see Delegate Grammer and Delegate Mangione, and that is all I see in the negative here. Does anybody else want to? Am I missing anybody? Screen's a little tricky here. Okay, so that is let's go to Delegate Pastor, my recording secretary. How's the vote come then?
Mr. Chair, I think
we have one, and we have one person. We have one member not here right now. Yes, Delegate Ruth.
I think Delegate Metzger put his hand up in opposition.
Thank you, Delegate Metzger. Would you? There, I see you now. Got it. Thank you very much. So we have 3 votes against.
Okay, I need to know who the absent person is.
Yeah, well, not really want to say it out loud, but the non-attendance currently is Speaker Jones right now.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, then we have, let me count them. We have 17 yay, and we have 3 nay, and 1 is absent.
Okay, probably 16 as there are 20 members, but that clearly is a constitutional majority, and we will send this bill on to the Ways and Means Committee. I want to make it clear that we will send it with an amendment to change the sponsor to the Baltimore County delegation in as much as the delegation has approved the bill. That concludes that, but the voting on House Bill 58. We now move to House Bill 108. We have a number of amendments, and I want to be clear at this point that we are not going to take the liberty at this time of asking the legislature to wait for us today. If we get to be 10:50, 10 minutes to 11, where we are in the bill, we will hold the bill till next week if we have not completed our work on it and take it up again next week. With that, what I'm going to do is we have an amendment from the sponsor. First, I'll get a brief report, but without the amendments, just what happened in the subcommittee. Delegate Cardin, I think I saw you come online.
Yep, I'm on, and I'm pulled over. So, okay, so we met. The subcommittee met. We had a really good, boisterous conversation about this legislation. I know that I was very appreciative that the county has now come out in favor of the legislation. That obviously is very meaningful to me personally. We did discuss it. We as a committee, we approved in concept the amendment from the sponsor, and then we drafted, and Delegate Phillips will talk about it, but we drafted one additional amendment with 3 parts to it that in concept, although we have not formally voted as a subcommittee, in concept, we voted to unanimously support those amendments. And then in theory, there would be enough votes in the subcommittee to pass the bill should those amendments pass. However, we did not formally vote on the bill. Does that make sense, Mr. Chair?
It makes perfect sense, and thank you. That's good work. What we're gonna do is I feel as if the amendments from the subcommittee fall into 3 and maybe 4 categories. So I've been instructed by the council that we can look at them separately if we want to. I hope that, but I'm going to ask the subcommittee's permission to do that. I'm also going to bring the sponsors amendment forward also. But the question would be, would it be okay if we look at them as sort of separate concepts, or do you want them taken as a whole?
Sure. No, we should look at them as separate concepts, but I think when we vote, we're going to need to vote because it's one amendment. I believe it's one amendment. It may be drafted as 2 amendments, but I believe it's drafted as 1 amendment. So we'll probably have to vote on the amendment together.
It's 3. I'll check with council, but I believe, Charity, you told me that if I take them up separately, it would be not difficult for you to separate out the 3 parts of them.
If that's what they want to do, but it is 1 amendment, and it would only be 1 vote for all 3 concepts.
Okay. All right. Got it. All right. With that, we'll allow for commentary quickly, but I would like to begin to look at the amendments also. Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Cardin, Doug Cardin. Yeah, I think that given the nature, sort of the vigorous discussion we had at subcommittee, I have not yet seen the amendments. I think it would be only fair for our subcommittee to have an opportunity to review these amendments and have some final discussion and actually take a formal vote in subcommittee, Mr. Chair, before we move this bill forward.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Delegate Metzger.
Yes, my thought was the subcommittee hasn't voted, so we don't have a kind of a concept of where we're at. So I think it would be, I support Delegate Naraki's idea there.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Szeliga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where can I read them? We're here early in session.
I'm going to repeat this. We have a Google Drive, and delegate and our council, I'm not a council, my administrator sends out a link to this regularly. There's a drive full of these. The council has been kind enough not only to put the amendment up, to put up an interlineated version of it. The
Oh,
amendments
good.
were
Okay, so
requested-
it's in.
Wait a minute, let me
it's-
finish, please. I'd like to finish. The amendments were established rather at a rather late date, and she worked very hard to get them up last night, and we sent a mail around to members saying, they're there. You can look at them. We, with as much alacrity as was possible, given the requests, they have been placed there for everyone to read.
Or have it like 12 hours ago or something. I would just
We can
say,
discuss the number of hours. We got them up there with the alacrity we could, and they were up there. I know that I read them this morning, and I understood them quite clearly. They were
okay, I'm going to pop over there and read them, but Mr. Chairman, I would say that today is January 26th.
Thank you.
We have many weeks left in session, and jamming this through today, I think, is a bad idea before all of us. I have other questions on the bill, but just
Thanks.
particularly on the amendments.
Thanks for your input. I resist the characterization of jamming it through, but we are going to take a look at the bill today. Okay. We may not vote on it, but we're certainly going to take a look on it and see where we are. This delegation needs to discuss it at this time. So the first amendment I would like us to look at is actually the sponsor's amendment, which was an amendment that would actually increase the county government's involvement in the decision-making process of whether to have them or not. The maker of the amendment is the sponsor. And Delegate Guyton, would you like to talk on that amendment for a moment or two?
Sure. To be honest, that language just replaced some other language in the bill because there was redundancy in what was already in state and county law. So it really does not change anything about the bill.
Okay. Does anyone need any more clarification on that?
Move favorable on the amendment.
Yeah, let's, I'm going to hold on motions until we get all the amendments out there. If you don't mind, Delegate Cardin, I appreciate the motion. And so we're going to discuss what the other amendments are. So now we turn to the subcommittee's amendments so they can be described and we can understand them. They are in parts, and Delegate Phillips, I'm going to turn to you. The first one that I think the first major part of the amendment deals with the use of the funding that would be realized from the fines levied on the speed cameras. Delegate Phillips.
Sure. And Mr. Chair, if I could, can I just summarize all three? And then if we want to talk about them individually, that's fine.
Certainly.
All right. They're really fall into three categories. First, as you see it in the reprint, funds raised and collected from cameras for those additional cameras would be used for other street calming measures. That might include speed bumps, it might include narrowing of roads, but there would be engineering related matters. The second is that this would sunset in 3 years so that we could take a look at, evaluate the effectiveness of this program and to see whether or not there were disparate implications from a socioeconomic standpoint, race standpoint, based on the placement of the cameras. And the third is that as we look at the study itself on the placement of the cameras, that disparate socioeconomic implications would be considered as part of the study. So those are really kind of the three primary areas that we discussed, so that this would not turn into a fees and fines collection scenario. It would not have a socially disadvantaged impact on socially disadvantaged communities, or be placed in communities that it might have a socially disadvantaged disparate impact. And then if we're going to collect these fees, that they be used in a way to alternative ways for reducing speed along our residential roadways. So those are really the three concepts.
Sorry. Thank you. We're sorting out helping somebody find the amendments who hasn't found them yet. Took me a second there. Is there any discussion on any of these amendments, either as a whole or in part? Yes, Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Delegate Phillips. That third amendment, the last one, you said, can you just go over that again, just in 15 seconds? I wrote down the notes here. It's a study on the socioeconomic or safety.
So there is a study before a camera can be placed. So before a camera can be placed, this legislation has already talked about a traffic study, right? And that the county would engage in a study to determine where the cameras would be placed. We're adding another factor, if you will, that would be considered as part of that study. In placing these cameras, is it a potential to have a disparate impact on any particular social economic groups?
Okay, thank you for explaining that. And Mr. Chair, should I hold off on comments or wait until comment on the amendment or comment on the bill as a whole? Should I hold off until you take comments? I don't know.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Do you want to comment on these amendments right now?
Well, it's kind of a general comment, but to me, that comment or that amendment, I guess I could comment on,
We're not into motions on them yet, so I'm taking amendments and general comments. You can go.
Yeah, okay. My general comment, and it deals with that amendment, is the sense that it, to me, makes it where this is no longer, that takes away a safety element. If this bill is about safety, then it has to deal with where the cameras have to go where the safety element exists, or else it's not about safety. And to me, it becomes about money, which is why in that third amendment, I would be against, but I do see what you're saying. And the other, I just wanted to comment on that. So thank you.
You're most welcome. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And regarding the amendment about the use of the funds, what is the current state law on how the funds are used?
Delegate Phillips or Carden, you have an answer to that question? I think we could turn to county if you're unsure. They probably have an idea.
I believe it goes to the general fund of the county. I mean, Ms. Ayosa may know the answer to that. But.
Jen Ayosa, would you care to weigh in, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that. So right now, the state law does restrict the use of funds for speed cameras for the costs of the program, so implementing the program, and then any additional revenues beyond those costs have to go back into public safety. That can be, pedestrian safety. It can be, I'm actually looking at the language in the law. So it's balances solely for the public safety purposes, including pedestrian safety programs.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Delegate Ruth. I was going to ask you if that answered your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could follow up.
Yes, please.
So how is this amendment different than, because it sounds like the money from the speed cameras is already going towards, making sure they're safe. How is this amendment different?
So if I could, and I'll ask Ms. Ayosa to comment. It is my understanding that, excuse me, where the money goes today is generally into some type of police-related support services. So it is not going into any type of street calming related support services.
Delegate Ruth, does that take care of does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Delegate Schlega. You're muted, ma'am. Delegate Schlega, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to read the amendment and ask a question. So my question is, on the reprint, are we now on the one amendment? Are we talking about all the amendments? Or I'm not sure when to ask this question. Is it Delegate Phillips' amendment that we're specifically talking about?
As Delegate Mangione asked, there's a lot of moving parts here. So I'm willing, right now, I really feel like there's a discussion period for us to talk about any of the amendments or, the bill in general with those amendments. So if you have a question or an inquiry, I'd be happy to hear it.
Thank you. So on page 4 of the bill, the reprint that Charity provided us, the language is stricken for place on line 17 to 19. The placement and use of the speed monitoring system is approved by the Baltimore County Council after notice and opportunity for public input. So right now, speed cameras are, we have the governing authority over a lot of this, obviously within school zones, and I have further comments on that later.
Delegate, let me just interrupt you. Delegate Slate, and just for reference, the one she's looking at in this case is the reprint of Delegate Guyton's one, just so if anybody's looking for where we're speaking.
Right.
Please continue. I just want to get everybody oriented there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is, the original bill that came in was to have in my understanding, have the police determine that it's necessary based on a traffic study, and then the county executive weigh in and the council approve it. Why do we take the council out of it? I don't understand why we're putting less checks and balances on this than we have, than the original bill had.
Okay, and since this is an amendment by the sponsor, I'm going to give Delegate Guyton the floor to answer that question.
Mr. Chair, this is exactly the same question I answered a few moments ago, I believe, dealing with the sponsor amendment. The language there that was stricken was really redundant because the council is already under law, has to vote on the regs and public comment. All of the things that were stricken are already part of the law. So that is why that was stricken and replaced, because it was redundant.
So not the regs, but the placement of each camera. So currently, Charity, maybe you can answer that. Is it just the regulations that the council is going to have an opportunity to vote on, or is it the location of each camera?
Charity, if you want to comment how you read the language, that's okay with me.
I need to look at this a little
Okay,
more.
thank you. Let's go to Jen Iosa, though. Maybe she can
Mr. Chair,
shed some
this
light
is
on
a
that.
conversation I've had with council,
Yes.
if you'd like. My understanding is because the county council actually does vote and promulgate the regs along with the county, they can make that determination whether they want to vote on every camera or not.
Thank you, Delegate. Jen, would you like to weigh in on that for me, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So Delegate Shalega, right now, anytime, and I think it was a few years ago, was the last time that our council took up speed cameras, they vote on the program. They vote on the criteria that were developed by the police department, or in this case, the state law. And so what we are envisioning and what our police department is assuming is what we will continue to do is they will develop the regulations that specify how and when complaints or community input will be taken, how a speed study will be conducted, the public engagement process, how all that will work. And that will go to the county council. So the county council will approve the program. And right now, the county council has determined what our cap is, if you will, on the number of speed cameras that we have deployed currently within speed zones. So our presumption is that that would be the same process that would be used for this modest expansion. What we don't want is the council having to weigh in on every single speed camera, because right now they don't do that. Right now, the police has the ability to move a camera from one school zone to another if they see an uptick in speeding, in violations, in safety challenges. If they had to go to the council for every single movement, especially say in the summer when folks may think school's out and we can suddenly speed, but our council only meets once a month, this could really delay the police department's ability to make a professional judgment call about the specific location of a single camera.
Thank you. So you said currently there is a number of speed cameras the council has approved. Do you know what that number is? I know there's
Whatever the
78.
current number is. So I believe that is 70 something.
78, but the law actually allows them to put it in any school zone, actually within a half a mile of the school zone. So can you tell us definitively that the council has actually said 78 cameras, no more than 78?
That is my understanding. I was not here with the county when that decision was made.
Yeah, we need that number. If you can find that out, if they currently have, you know, our reading of the law, they just changed it. They can put a cameras plural, anywhere within a half a mile of a school.
That is the state law. That is not the local.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that would be important for us to know if they currently have the ability to put, you know, hundreds more cameras than they currently have, and could actually increase that without this law. That would be important information for us to know.
So thank you. We'll look for some clarification on the council's, if they've approved an exact number or where they are on that. And
Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. One is about the amendment that we're currently speaking about. So I was wondering if the inverse is also true. So if the council does not affirmatively, say yes to a speed camera in front of a school, does this also limit the Baltimore County Council's ability to remove a speed camera in front of a school or wherever in an area if there was a problem with that camera? So if there was large sort of community feedback negatively about a particular camera, would this amendment stop them from proactively being able to go and vote as a council to remove that camera, move that camera somewhere else?
Maker of the amendment? Delegate Guyton? I don't see her on screen. I would take
Mr. Chair,
Delegate, yeah, the chair of the
Chair, if
subcommittee.
I think it's Delegate Cardin. Thank you,
I'm
Mr. Chair.
Okay, hold on one second, Delegate Guyton. Delegate Cardin is talking.
No, I'll defer to Delegate Guyton if she wants.
Okay, she's there now. Let's get an answer.
No, I was here all along, just having trouble with my phone. No, it's fine. Delegate Cardin can answer that question.
I believe that as described by Ms. Ayosa just now, the council has the authority to approve and disapprove the program with the regulations and with the authority given to the police to then move and remove. So the council has never, nor did it ever want the authority to look at individual cameras. And that's what I'm hearing. And certainly I'm assuming that Ms. Ayers is going to get us a little bit more information per the request of Delegate Shalega, but that sounds to me to be quite reasonable.
Okay, well, thank you. It's an answer, and Doug Naraki, thank you for the question.
I do have one more, Mr. Chair, as well, if I may.
Let's move through and we'll get back to you, okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right, Delegate Metzger.
Thank you. Since we're talking and I'm hearing county council and this one and that one, there's so many moving parts to this. I'm wondering if this wouldn't be better to do a study. It's just so many moving parts, and I just don't know if we can comprehend them all at one time. But I have a bill coming up soon that I prefer a study with as well. So that's just my comment on amendments and so.
Well, thank you for that. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I wanted to ask about the amendment about considering whether the placement of the speed monitoring system disparately impacts drivers based on race or socioeconomic status. Obviously, it's really important that we get this right. But I also wanted to ask if a community wants a speed camera, and I know that there is community provisions in this, if they want a speed camera, but then it's determined that that would be a disparate impact, but the community itself wants it anyway, would that override the community's ability to get that speed camera?
So Delegate Ruth, it's just if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
It's just the way the legislation is written, it is another factor to be considered.
Okay. So
can I chime in as well?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair, please.
Yeah, in our discussions, and this was really important. In fact, we had multiple discussions on this, that this is information to be gathered, and not necessarily primarily, but partially in order to inform us when the sunset comes as to whether this program is operating the way that we want it to. So it's not necessarily dispositive if it is, if they're being placed in places that we would consider racially disparate. That may be the intent, and we may find that that's what we want. We might also find that that's not we don't want, or that it's not happening. We just need the data so that we can make an informed decision when 3 years comes down the road.
All right, and I have to comment on this amendment also, that I've done a little investigation, and actually tickets by speed cameras are not given to drivers, they're given to vehicles. And so
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, they're given to vehicles, but just similar to GoCap data, we know the owners of the vehicles, and the fees and fines go to the owner of the vehicle.
Yes, however, I'm not certain, and I'm investigating this, and maybe you can shed some light on it. I'm not certain that racial and information is available by owner. So having an owner receive a ticket, I've had this expressed to me by several groups. I haven't gotten to MVA yet on it, but would that information be available if merely we were looking at the owner of a vehicle? I also know that on my driver's license, my race is not declared. I don't know if that information resides with the MVA, and I'm going to turn to Delegate Stein on this because he often knows a lot of things about MVA since he is intimately involved with ENT. And so since I'm unsure, and Delegate Phillips, I understand your concerns. Delegate Stein, can you shed any light on that at all, or is that too technical a question right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't. I can check with the Transportation Council on ENT as to whether he knows. But I don't.
I don't even know if racial information is stored with my driver's license. I can't find it on my driver's license. But that doesn't mean it's not there.
It is a choice, Mr. Chair. That's a choice, but most that information is available on your driver's license, or
but is it available as an owner
within the database, within the MVA database.
And I have Delegate Iosa raising her hand. I'm going to recognize Delegate Jen Iosa. You might as well be. What the heck?
Thank you for giving me a promotion, Mr. Chairman.
You don't really want it, trust me.
So when I saw the amendments this morning, I immediately reached out to our Baltimore County Police Department and specifically asked this question. And I'm really grateful to my colleagues there because they immediately reached out to the current vendor who runs the speed camera program in Baltimore County. And thankfully, he responded quickly. And what he said is this: the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration no longer puts sex or race information in registration plates when we run them. Most out-of-state registrations are the same. Our vendor can only track the zip codes of citations mailed.
Right. Okay. Mr. Chair, if I can just chime in that the amendment,
I think yes, you can actually. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. The amendment does not talk about the racial disparity of the recipients. It talks about the placement of the cameras, I believe.
Well, I'm going to read the line of the amendment that I think is troubling us here. It says, considers whether the placement of the speed monitoring system at the proposed location disparately impacts drivers based on race or socioeconomic status. Now, can you differentiate that for me?
I mean, it's my understanding that the data is going to look at the placement of the cameras and whether there's information about the racial disparity of the placement of the cameras would be the information that could be used, and not necessarily the recipients of the tickets.
So
And
the
I'll give you
general
the
racial
example I
makeup
can
of the
give.
area? Is that what you're saying?
Perhaps, but or the example I would give is, let's say, Rolling Road, that there are people that come from all over the county,
right,
that go down Rolling Road to avoid traffic on the Beltway, and whereas that neighborhood may be there may be a neighborhood in Rolling Road that may have a certain racial makeup or something to that effect. And I'm just saying that could be the information gleaned versus, and it might be informative, it might not, but at least it's going to be information that we can glean that might help us with this determining things. That I think was the intent as well.
So it's more about the area, because I'm getting it from several sources on my phone also that this kind of information is not available to pull off on particular owners. So we'll have to see if that one's possible. All right, moving on. Delegate Stein, you had your hand up too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Phillips, just a sort of technical question about your proposed amendment on the uses of the revenue. I certainly understand your intention that any balance remaining after allocation of fines or costs should be used solely to assist in covering the cost of traffic calming devices in the affected neighborhoods where speed cameras are located. I guess my question is, if a neighborhood hasn't requested speed cameras, where would that funding go? Would it go for other, public safety purposes as sort of the default provision in the state bill?
Delegate Phillips.
I'm sorry, Delegate Stein, I lost you for a moment. You were, could you repeat what you just asked? I apologize.
Sure, no, that's right. I'll go off video. Maybe my reception's not great right now. So, Delegate, I was just saying, with respect to your provision for how the fines are to be used, that after paying for costs, that the balance should be used solely to cover the cost of traffic calming devices. My question is, if a neighborhood, my understanding is the neighborhood has to request those speed bumps, et cetera. And so if they didn't, would, this remaining amount go to to speed humps in other communities, or would go for other public safety purposes? So that was my particular question.
So my sense is we would, once again, it's not directed to a particular community, but so let me kind of give some background on why this was raised. There are a number of studies that have occurred about speed cameras and the impact of speed cameras on certain communities. There was a very lengthy study done in the District of Columbia and another one done in Chicago. And after the placement of the cameras and after the studies were completed, several years after the cameras were installed, they saw that there was a significant disparate impact on communities of color receiving the larger number of fines and the placement of cameras being in those communities. So all we're saying, and so there are alternatives to speed cameras. And the idea is that we would leverage the funds made from the speed cameras, those that go beyond the cost of the program, to look at other ways, which then do not require people to be fined, but they help to reduce and make our communities more safe. And so it may not go directly to the community who said they don't want the speed bumps or other street calming, but it would go to that program. It would go into a street calming program that was not reliant upon cameras.
I see. Okay, that certainly makes sense. So it would go into the traffic calming program, regardless of whether there's speed cameras there or not.
Correct.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
All right, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about, I believe it's Delegate Guyton's amendment, and it's what Delegate Schlega was talking about. So, and I have a question about direction and policy. So if we adopt all of this and pass all of this, we move from a posture where law enforcement can move a camera from school to school, which accounts for more than half of the county, to a posture where police can move a camera anywhere, in a non-school zone, in a residential area, to a personal street. And, you know, I kind of thought it was maybe the intention of the other amendment to kind of lean in the other direction. So here is my question. If we remove our kind of cage here and we allow Baltimore County to essentially adopt whatever regulations they want, when they vote for this, if some communities have a real problem with a handful of cameras, the county's not going to pick those out. They're just going to vote up the package. And, you know, I might have a couple communities in my district that now have a speed camera on a residential street because Councilman Koch, voted for the bill. So why wouldn't we, as a matter of policy, lean in the other direction and maybe say, at the discretion of the council member, a camera can be approved or not? Because we're making a pretty significant change here in allowing police to put a camera essentially anywhere. So what can someone comment as a matter of policy, maybe what the subcommittee, did you touch that? What was the discussion like?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Thank you. So number one, as was already discussed by, I believe, Delegate Nawaki, we think that somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of the county, there's already authority to put the cameras. The county has decided to utilize the program with the limited efforts that it already is doing. Seems to be a very effective policy in slowing people down in the locations they want to. And the question is whether that other 25%, I apologize for my background, by the way, I'm just realizing it. My daughter was using my computer. Okay. And I don't know how to change it.
Makes you look pretty important there, Delegate Cardin, I got to tell you.
Okay. Anyway, so the county believes that this is and has indicated that in their favorable support of the bill, that this is a effort that actually slows people down, and it shouldn't matter where in the county it is. The police have to go through a very rigorous, this is the policy issue that you're bringing up, a very rigorous analysis as to whether this is a good use of the camera to put it in a specific location. From all indications, school zones seem to be very, very a good place to do it. I would imagine that the police are not going to take lightly the idea of moving from a school zone to a non-school zone. That is going to be, and that was one of my major concerns, as people have heard me say. But the police have indicated that the rigorous decision is to save lives and not, and that's really where we're going. So this policy decision is really, as I believe Ms. Ayosa said, it's modest in what it will do because, number one, there's not a lot that the county can't already do. But if they come up with if the police's study shows that it is appropriate to save lives, they should have that flexibility without having to then jump back down to Annapolis to do it. They should use the resources they have right now that have worked very effectively over the last number of years and just be able to do it. And if they want to expand, they can expand, and it's it seems like it's a self-funding program, so they can already expand it. So we're really only giving them much more power than they already have. We're just saying, we trust that you're going to do the right thing. And I think that we can now do that given sort of the information we've gotten and the amendments that are being proposed.
What you're doing here is you're shifting the burden from the police and the council to the community. And if they have a problem with it, and it gets voted up in this bigger package, like how do you contest that? And I'll give you an example. Eastern Technical High School, during any kind of time of the day where a student is coming in and out, the speed goes to 0. But the camera remains there because during the off hours, it's a bit of a hill, and maybe you can ring up a couple bucks on people. And we have, in addition to that, we have a crosswalk. In addition to that, we have a speed bump. In addition to that, we have a police officer there several hours a day. But the people that live there who don't like the camera, you know, it's then incumbent on them to raise a stink about it. And it's not something the average person is accustomed to do, to go and, hey, how do we go about talking about getting this speed camera moved to somewhere else? So I just think it's more prudent to have the safeguards when you're putting it in, as opposed to making it incumbent on the community to figure out how the heck you start to have a discussion about, you know, moving it out.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Grammer. Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm following up a little bit because I think Delegate Ruth made a good point about whether or not a socioeconomically challenged area is going to get, you know, the speed camera or not. The fines, for example, what are they, and what happens if you don't pay the fine? I know Washington, D.C. had over $1 billion, if you can believe that, of unpaid traffic and speed fines. So does it affect your license? I understand Delegate Cardin mentioned earlier about about the study, but that's 3 years down the road. In 3 years, if somebody who can't afford to pay a ticket, what happens? 3 years is a lot of time for them to kind of be really stuck if they can't afford it, and then they rack up maybe another one because they live in that area. As you mentioned, the prior study from, I guess, Washington, D.C. said that it affects certain areas. So say they get 2 or 3 of these tickets, they don't have the money to pay them. What happens to that?
First of all, to them, I would say slow down if they're getting multiple tickets at the same location.
However,
we did answer this question last week, and I will do it briefly.
Okay, I apologize if I missed that.
State sets the maximum at 40. District court can go lower if they want to. They haven't been. After that, it's similar to a parking violation in terms of enforcement, because it is a fine on the vehicle and not on the driver. And so whatever happens normally to someone who doesn't pay a fine on their vehicle would happen in this case. It's not different.
Okay, but that person doesn't lose their license over this.
I really don't. I've never actually not paid my fines, and so I haven't done that research. Okay. I'm not sure what the penalties are, or what the approach is, but this bill is.
I apologize. I missed that last week, and that is a concern. I mean, you would hate to see somebody who's going 12 miles an hour over the limit, gets a speed ticket, and whatever their situation may be, potentially ends up. And that's why I was just wondering. I'll do a little research of my own, or I can ask the MVA, potentially lose their license. I don't know if that happens, but that would be one hell of a consequence for somebody who did a little speeding. But I understand, and thank you. And sorry I missed that last week.
That's all right. Well, it need to be said again. We need to be sure we got it clear. Thank you. I'm glad you asked. Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. This kind of gets to the funding part of one of the Delegate Phillips or our subcommittee's amendments. I just had a couple questions about that. And maybe this is Miss Aosa, or maybe it's someone else. Could someone tell me who is the organization that the police department works with to run the speed camera program?
We have a contract with a vendor that has been approved by the council. Let me see if I can find the name of the company.
Okay.
If you want to ask another question, I'll look and see if
Sure.
I can
and
find
so
it.
it would be a follow-up. So just so I'm clear, that company is a for-profit, not a non-for-profit company or entity?
I don't know until I find the name of the company.
Seems likely. Not too many not-for-profits are collecting money for people.
I understand, Mr. Chair. I just don't want to make any assumptions.
We'll wait for the answer there. Yeah, absolutely. Is that the extent of your questions, Delegate Naraki?
It is not. There's a follow-up to that, so I can ask while Ms. Aosa is looking, for that information. So my sort of follow-up to that question would be, could you describe, and maybe this is Ms. Aosta, maybe it's someone else, could someone describe the criteria for movement of speed cameras? So once a camera is placed in front of a school or other location, if this bill goes forward, what's the criteria for the decision to move that camera? And in that criteria, is revenue generation ever considered as a factor when we decide to move cameras?
Delegate Naraki, I really would have to defer to our police department, who is the one making those decisions. I would draw your attention to the written testimony that our police chief provided to the delegation, where he describes, in his view, 4 examples of the kind of residential condition under which they would consider placing a speed camera. And my understanding is that the process he describes is the process they use right now. If you would like sort of a additional sort of step-by-step process, I can certainly put you in touch with the police department.
Yeah, Ms. Osa, I definitely would appreciate some additional information with that. And I think it's important information frankly, for the entire delegation to consider. I've had conversations with several council members, Democrats, Republicans, bipartisan, who have indicated to me that one of the criteria for movement of speed cameras is when those cameras stop generating a sufficient amount of revenue. And I think that that's an important piece of information for us to understand whether the camera program is, what the criteria is, what the factors are. Is it about safety? Look, if it's not generating revenue, I think it's because we've changed behaviors, and I think that's a good thing. And that camera should stay there because we're changing behaviors in that community. But if we're moving it because it's not generating enough revenue, I think that that's potentially problematic. And I would like to understand exactly how that looks.
That's good. And the bill doesn't really talk about that part of it, but thank you for pointing that out. Delegate Szeliga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there were questions about, and I myself had them, about the fee, and then what if you don't pay it? So I asked Dr. Google, and Dr. Google says if the fine is not paid within 60 days, the motor vehicle's registration will be suspended and an additional $30 fee will be assessed. So I don't know, Dr. Google's not always right. So I'd like to get confirmation on that, because a $40 ticket turns into a $70 ticket. Does anybody on the call know if Dr. Google's right?
We have research in our
I-
office, and we have that information. That sounds accurate to us.
Yeah. And
Delegate
if
Phillips,
I-
I'm
if
sorry.
I-
Yeah, go ahead.
And if I may, that's really not the issue. And if you look at the studies that have been done on this, yes, Delegate Szeliga, that happens. Then I get a suspended registration. Then, unfortunately, and I get flags, so $70 can turn into $200 pretty quickly. Then, if I get pulled over driving on a suspended registration, then I can face other traffic-related civil penalties. Potentially, this could escalate to incarceration. And so I apologize, guys, if I keep staying on this thing, because a little thing for a poor person can turn into a very, very big thing. So, but yes, you are correct about the fees and the fines. So it does not impact your driver's license directly, but often indirectly, once you escalate, it can be a significant issue.
Yeah, I'm glad you explained that. I actually, my foster son had a similar thing happen to him, and he actually ended up incarcerated over it. So, I think we really need to look at how these fines and fees and everything rack up. And the other concern I have, my mother-in-law's car was stolen. She lives in Towson. And whoever stole her car got a number of camera tickets and Easy Pass violations and, you know, a number of other things. I think they actually ended up putting her license plate on another car. And so I'd like to have some kind of provision, and I may try to get an amendment drafted up, so that the speed camera company makes it easier for people with a stolen car, because it was not, I had to take care of it for my, you know, 70-something-year-old mother-in-law who, you know, couldn't negotiate all the government bureaucracy. But I had to actually get a copy of the police report, which is not as easy as it should be. And then I had to provide that to the speed camera ticket company, whoever collects that. And then I had to wait for that to be adjudicated. So, you know, especially with auto theft at the rate it is right now, you know, that's something that I may try to have an amendment drawn up to make sure that we're not entrapping, you know, especially older people if their car's stolen, and you know, working families where negotiating all the government bureaucracy and having to take off to go to the police to get a copy of the police report.
Delegate Slager, are we on the bill, on the amendments to the bill right now?
Yeah, I'm on it. And you said we could talk about the whole bill. And
Well,
then
you're
this
talking
is
about you're talking about police efficiency and things. I was just making sure.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the speed camera tickets plural, that my mother-in-law's car thief racked up for her, and, you know, we had to unravel. So this is another aspect I may have an amendment drawn up for us to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Long.
Thank you. I was beginning to wonder whether you could see my hand raised. A lot of my questions.
I called you in order there, Delegate Long. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't have my full screen on. Anyway, thank you for this time. A lot of my questions have been answered, but I do have specific questions to ask. What is the appeal process? And if you get a ticket, I guess you can go to court and have a hearing in front of a judge. Am I correct?
The only thing I would add is that this ticket is not a brand new type of ticket. It's for a new reason and found by a new way, but it is a ticket against the vehicle. And so I imagine it would be similar to getting a parking ticket in terms of how you appeal.
You can, Mr. Chair, you can go to court to have a trial, and then you can appeal that decision. I believe it is a civil penalty, not a criminal penalty. So the standard of proof is lower, but you can even request, I believe you might be able to request the presence of a witness from the other side, although I'm not 100% sure. I have seen this in court quite a bit, where people try these cases. So,
pardon me,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Delegate Aosa. I've done it twice now. Ms. Aosa.
Yes. To answer Delegate Long's question, under on the Baltimore County Maryland.gov website, under police traffic cameras, there is a description of when warnings are issued in the initial days of a speed camera being placed, and then there is a description about appealing a fine, requesting a citation review, and there are also forms and a description of what happens once you request that review. It's all posted there.
All right, thank you. Thank you. My other question is, I actually had it happen to me where there was a camera that took a picture of a tag that was, I'm glad was on the back of a Cadillac, because everybody knows I can't afford a Cadillac. I drive a Ford F-150. That's the only way we could identify who the ticket was for. That being said, they sent me the ticket because it looked like my tag number. And jumping through the hoops to get it resolved, I even had to ask my staff to get a hold of SDET. And I'm sure they have the same cameras or the same setup. And I just can't imagine, a driver having to go through all that. I mean, if I wasn't elected and didn't have the resources I have at hand, I think I would have went ahead and paid the fine.
Right. There's no change
And
in
that's not
policy.
fair.
Delegate
And
Long,
that's not,
there's no change in policy on that in the bill. That policy already exists, and I appreciate your concerns. More
well, no,
cameras
that,
might mean more of that. I understand.
well, that's one of my concerns. And the other thing is too, is the company that's operating these cameras, are they actually the same cameras same company that's operate the ones in the city? Because we know what the debacle happened in Baltimore City. They issued a bunch of cameras and then he found out, a bunch of tickets. Then he found out that the cameras were off.
Okay, so Delegate Naraki asked us earlier also, Ms. Iosa, have you been able to come up with an answer for that for us on who the vendor is?
No, it was not in the email that I received from PD, but I can certainly, I've already sent an email to ask if that vendor is a nonprofit or for-profit company.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I wasn't asked whether it was for-profit or nonprofit. That's not my question. My question is it the same company that was operating the speed cameras in Baltimore City when they had that real mix-up of giving out tickets to people that actually weren't speeding? And it took forever to get it resolved, and people's registrations got suspended. They got big fines. Anyway, it was a big debacle, and I'm just curious if it's the same company that's operating these cameras or the same ones that was operating in the city. And again, I'm very concerned about the process of paying the $40 fine. It's the fine. It's just the fine is just too high.
Thank you, Delegate Long. Thank you. Okay, appreciate that. Okay, we're at 10:45. We're going to go for about 5 more minutes. I think it should be pretty clear to everyone, probably, that we're not going to be able to settle into a vote. There's a number of things we need to work through on amendments on this bill. I'm going to get through as many more comments as I can here. But once we get to 10:50 or a little after that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. But we need to get all the commentary. I will say, in case I don't have time to say it again, that what we need to do now is we need to communicate with the members of the subcommittee. That list is available. You see that 2 of the members are very active right now, Delegate Cardin and Delegate Phillips, about the amendments and what might be brought forward. It's my intent next week, we will have those amendments in front of us. We will move on them and then possibly move on the bill. But before I ramble too long and take up too many of those few remaining minutes, Delegate Metzger.
Yes, thank you, sir. The couple of questions that I have: has the county council weighed in, or have they taken up this? And was it a majority? That's the first question.
I'm turning to the sponsor for the answer to that question. We're not hearing from her, so I will tell you. Okay, there you are.
It takes me a minute. Yes, we have heard from several members and the chair, and I all the testimony is in the Google Docs. Thank you.
Delegate Metzger, is that good
All
for
right,
you?
yes. Well, then let me ask you this one. Who pays for the initial startup of these cameras?
I'll take it. This is not specifically on the expansion, but I understand the concern. Can anyone answer that question?
Well, then let me ask it this way. Who totally administers the program?
Well, this is the question that we've been asking. There's a vendor that that they use.
That's why I said this. That's why I said earlier, sir, there's so many moving parts to this.
Correct. I took your comments to heart, sir. Okay. We're actually not going to move on the bill today. So I think we're there. And do you have any other questions, Delegate Metzger? Okay. Delegate Bhandari. You're muted, sir.
Okay.
There you go.
Sorry. Yeah. It's a very enriching conversation. And from the conversation that we had, one is like from the fines collected from by Baltimore County because of violation enforced by speed monitoring system. And based on the conversation, there was a lot of confusion. I would love to bring a friendly amendment. We don't have a time, and I've reached out to the bill its sponsor, if that is okay. So just, we don't have a time. I don't want to talk.
Okay.
Here.
Right. So if you have other amendments, by the way, you can go through us and we can help you. We can help set you up with Charity, because you can ask for those amendments directly through her. She actually prefers that and will do the work for us. Great hard worker. That will save you the trouble of having another writer who hasn't been listening to this for the last hour understand all the vagaries. So if you have an amendment you'd like to do, make sure everyone's aware of it so we can get it up in good time so we can discuss it. And thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Okay, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you. I have a question for Ms. Ayosa, and I may have an amendment. What does the county, when Delegate Scott and Delegate Cardin talked about his amendment, which would require that the fines go to calming devices, that goes somewhere. How does the county handle, as a matter of budget, dollars for this kind of specific project? Is it public safety, which is a little broader? Is it traffic calming, which is more specific to the problem? How does the county, is there a dedicated fund? How does the county handle that?
Thank you for the question, Delegate Grammer. Right now, my understanding is that there is a public safety line within the police department's budget where these funds would be directed. We don't yet have language specifying that the traffic calming, but traffic calming is often considered a part of public safety. It's just one of the types of activities that may be engaged in.
So we have a fund, it's broader. These fines may go to that fund, but may not currently fund traffic calming. And Delegate Scott is right on in his description of these devices. So currently, traffic tickets may fund public safety issues that aren't necessarily germane to reducing speed.
I would have to discuss that with the police department because I'm not familiar with the way that they expend that particular budget, sir.
Okay.
Is there any maintenance of effort on that fund?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Meaning
budget, kind of the way we maintain an appropriation for any sort of issue.
I don't believe that I'm not sure I understand your question. So are you asking me if the general fund is supplementing public safety so that we have a certain...
So for example, we have maintenance of effort for teachers or education in general. We don't go...
Okay, Delegate Grammer, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to ask you to take this question offline if you would, please.
Okay.
It's very specific, and I thank you. Delegate Ruth, looks like you've lowered your hand. I was going to go to you next. We're at 10:51. Delegate Naraki, you got 30 seconds to ask a question. Here we go.
Sure. This could either be to the sponsor or possibly Delegate Phillips because it seems like he's done a lot of research. I have asked for it as well, but does anyone know the amount of registrations that have a flag on them in Baltimore County from speed camera violations?
I'm certain that's a very specific question. I would be tickled if someone knew the answer to that.
I'm getting the information from the MBA, but I'm just curious if anyone maybe already had it.
I'll stand down for anyone who thinks they have that information in front of them. Okay, so that's something we'll need to, that you can search up online. I'm sure it'd be relevant to the conversation. All right, so I charge the subcommittee with meeting again. If you have amendments that you'd like that subcommittee to know that you would like them to consider, I urge you to get in contact with our delegation council. I can help you do that and get the amendments drawn as quickly as possible so that we can post them and so that the subcommittee can consider them, and then we can go forward from there. It is 10:52 or 3. And so I'm going to adjourn this meeting for the week and hold this bill for consideration next week. And the only thing I will add at the end here is that on a lighter note, go Ravens. See you all later.